Today's makeup tutorial is using products I've either found at the drugstore or at Target. So I put a little serum on my face when I got up this morning, but I'm going to sort of refresh everything with the Yes to Cucumber Soothing Cooling Hydrating Mist. This comes out in like a straight shot, so prepare yourself and keep your mouth closed. So what this does for me, and I kind of just pat it in, is it just adds a little bit of extra moisture to my skin if I don't want to layer a moisturizer on top of the serum I already put on. It kind of preps my skin for better absorption of the foundation. So anyway, I got a little bit too much on my eye there. I'll let that sit. I'll start with my eyes as always. Now the only thing I don't have from the drugstore is an eyeshadow primer. I could have grabbed one, but I didn't. So I'm using a bit of concealer on my eyelids. So this will cover some of the veins that you see and some darkness along my lash line, but also act as a little bit of like a sticky base for eyeshadow if I work quickly enough. This step I would say isn't, ideally you would be using an eyelid primer that's intended for this purpose, but if you don't have an eyelid primer, or eyeshadow primer maybe, concealer is an option. It just might not be like the best option of all. So with my Revlon Color Stay Not Just Nudes palette, I'm going to do my best to use drugstore brushes, but there's some that I have. Brushes aren't, I feel, as important as like the drugstore makeup. So this is a Bare Essentials brush. It came from the outlet. So the shade I'm going to grab, and I just don't use the brushes that come in the kits. They're terrible. I'm going to put this all over my base and maybe put a touch of that on top of it, and then grab some of these darker browns for my crease. Okay? So I'm starting with this shimmery shade and just going all over the lid. I'm using this flat brush. I find that that's best for kind of spreading out and all over the lid shade. You don't want to use anything too small or pointy. This is kind of a great way to add a little bit of pop behind a darker eyeshadow color if you use a shimmery light shade first. Now I'm picking up that gray shade that was right over top of that shimmery shade, and I'm going over top just to add a little bit more depth, but not a ton more color, as you can see. It's just a little bit darker. So I've got that darker color in the crease, and then I'm picking up this light sort of vanilla shade without as much shimmer. I'm going to go along my brow bone and just sort of soften that darker brown crease shade I put in. Blend it in a little bit. For the lash line, I'm using the Pixi Black Silk Lash Line Ink. This is a felt tip liner. Let me get a little closer to the mirror here. And what this does is you can either use it like a traditional liquid liner or dot it. This is what I like to do. Dot it right at the base of your lashes, and it'll create a little bit of a thicker looking lash line. For a little bit more liner along the upper lash line, I'm using another Pixi product. This is the Endless Brow Gel Pen, but I like using this as liner. It doesn't work great for me. It's a little bit too dark for brows, but really, really great for liner. I'll just go right over top of that area that I dotted. And it'll add just a little bit more definition to that upper lash line. So I'm using a Sonia Kashuk eyelash curler because I love Sonia Kashuk tools, and a commenter recently said that this was really similar to the Shu Uemura lash curler, which is I think the post was titled "The Beauty Tool I'll Never Stray From." It's the eyelash curler I've been using for absolutely ever, and I love it. There's no comparison to me, but I have to try the Sonia Kashuk one. So this is kind of a first impressions with the drugstore look. So I'm going to curl my lashes, and then the mascara I'm using is the Falsies Push Up Drama by Maybelline. I've used the Falsies before. It wasn't my favorite, and then I feel like I've used a stiletto, a mascara with a stiletto name in the title, which which I think was by Maybelline. So this tube reminded me of that, and I thought we'll give this a shot for the drugstore look as well. Okay, so while that first coat of mascara is setting a little bit, I'll put on the foundation. I'm using the Maybelline Dream Velvet Matte Foundation in Ivory. And I will use a Real Techniques brush to apply this. This is a really moussey foundation. You can see it right here on my hand. It's not gonna run anywhere. It's really moussey, but it goes on, I'd say medium to full coverage. And you have to work it in a little bit. This was way too much, by the way. I don't know what exactly I was thinking there. But once you blend it in, I find it wears really nice, and for a drugstore foundation, this has been a winner in my book recently. So for eyebrows, I grabbed the NYX eyebrow pencil in taupe. This just has a twist up end and then a little brush if you need to soften anything out. But I'm gonna fill in the eyebrows a little bit. I think this shade will end up being a little bit too warm for my eyebrow shade that I prefer on myself because my hair is very cool toned, or another word for that would be ashy. And I like my eyebrows to match my original hair color as best as they can. So this is a touch too warm, but if I had to get something at the drugstore, I would look for a taupe shade and just work with it. For the lower lash line, I'm grabbing this Pixi product. This is a duo, the Endless Silky Eye Intensity Duo. This end is called, well, it's Rich Sepia and Moon Glow. So I think this brown end would be the Rich Sepia color. Sepia? I never know. So I'm using the Moon Glow right along my lower lash line. This isn't gonna add as much like depth or color, and it'll more just be kind of a finishing for me. I don't like leaving my lower lash line bare when I put so much on my upper, like my eyelid and upper lash line. It's just a preference thing, I guess. So that's on my lower lash line, and then for the rest of my face, to add a little bit of color, I'm using this Maybelline. I'm using a lot of Maybelline products. This Maybelline Master Contour contouring kit in light medium. I really like this. First time I used it, I thought this is going to be a little bit too warm for me, but in fact, it's not, and I really, really like it. So the brush I love to use for contour or bronzer or any bronzer. So the brush I love to use for contour, bronzer, anything like that is the Sigma brush. I don't like Sigma brushes, but I have this from past Christmas, and I'm just using it. If it falls apart or if I get another brush, I'll start using that instead, but I have it. So I'm adding some of this darker shade to the outer corners of my face really softly, so I'm not going for a sharp contour here. As you can tell, if you want a more defined contour, use a more defining brush, something with smaller and tighter packed bristles. I just want to look like I was in the sun for a minute. Then for blush, I'm using a Sonia Kashuk brush and just picking up this blush shade right from the center here. And for highlighter, I'm using a fluffy Tarte brush I got and picking up the highlight on the end of this palette. I'm going at the top of my cheekbones. So I'll finish with a little bit of mascara on my lower lash line. Normally I use a bottom lash mascara, but I'm sticking with drugstore products here. So I'm going to use that same mascara I used on my upper lashes on my lower, and just hold the wand pretty much like this the whole time so I don't get a glob of mascara on my lower lid, lower lash line. I just realized I forgot to put on under eye concealer. that speaks volumes to the coverage that Maybelline Velvet Foundation will give you, because I just pressed a little bit of it along my under eye area. But I'm picking up some of this Maybelline Master Conceal in light, and I'm just going to dot this as close as I can without messing up mascara, kind of in this dark well of my face where the darkness tends to live. And I'll finish with a Burt's Bees Blush Basin lipstick. I love these Burt's Bees lipsticks. So this is the final look. You can find all these products at Target for sure, especially the Pixie products. Those you can only find at Target. But the Maybelline and Revlon, you can find those at basically any drugstore. I hope you enjoyed this makeup tutorial. If you want to see quick product demos, first impressions, that sort of thing, follow me both on Snapchat and Periscope. Often without warning, I'll just hop on one of those channels and say, hey, I just got this, here's my first impression of it. So if that sounds like that would be fun to watch, I am K8_small_things on both Snapchat, Periscope, and Instagram, and Twitter. Yeah, I think that's all.